Greetings and welcome to episode 9 of Kerbal Space Program AA, Jeb Gets Busted. In the previous episode, Jeb stole a rocket, took off to the moon, and came back. He did pick up some science on the way, and it looked like he was going to be busted right out of the program, but there was some real valuable information in it, and he became a hero. So instead of being busted, well, he still got busted. His job is to fly this thing, an airplane. They've never made an airplane in KSP before. So they made this little tiny dwarf plane and attached some new instrumentation to it, the infamous thermometer. So Jeb takes off, and his mission here is going to be to fly off to the mountains and get some temperature readings. It's, well, a punishment that kind of doesn't fit the crime, but because he was so successful and considered a hero now, this is about all he's going to be able to do. The plane has some stability issues, as you see there, but Jeb's at the controls. And because he's not going to have any kind of an issue flying this thing. The mission is going to be at night, so Jeb is on this top secret mission, and we don't want those other people on Kerbin that have the other space program to see what's going on. So it's done under the guise of night, and hoping that they haven't launched satellites that can see these things yet. So Jeb heads off to the mountains, and he's flying pretty decently here. The beginning, his little loop-de-loop, because he pulled too hard on the stick, he's learned very quickly the best way to fly this ship. We're looking all around it little by little, and he's getting over to the mountains and making his turn. And we're going to see him pretty much in his same giddy mood, laughing and smiling the whole time. So Jeb makes his turn over the mountains. How do we know? Because Jeb says so. He's taking his temperature readings and his observations, and obviously there's not a lot of science to gain here. This is a test mission more than it's out there to gain science. It's also a punishment. Jeb's got to learn that he's not always going to be the one in the limelight. Sometimes there's going to be some other people that have to step forward. Kerbin is filled with hundreds of millions of little green guys that are ready to fly off into space and visit distant worlds. Jeb's completed his mission, almost. He still has to land this thing over on the runway, which is going to be quite difficult, because no one's ever landed a plane in Kerbal Space Program before. Well, in my version anyway. So Jeb's heading off to the area where he's got to set down, and little by little he's getting closer and getting nervous and wondering, well, I had that little loop-de-loop that I pulled in the beginning. Am I going to be able to put this thing down on the ground? But of course he's smiling and giddy as he always is. Plane's going pretty rapidly, but we're trying to slow it down now so we don't have to make a big giant smoking hole in the brand new runway that they created for this thing. So here we come, little by little, closer and closer, dark as night, no lights on at all for him to even make up. There they come. Lights are on now. Setting up his final approach. He's a little bit off to the right, and yaw controls just aren't working for him. It doesn't have a lot of wing area and definitely is pretty unstable. But for a first shot at making an aircraft, it's not so bad for this KSP program. So Jeb's got her on final, little by little getting down to the level. Now he's got to remember that as we slow down to normal speed, that we don't know what the tolerances on this landing gear are, so he's going to have to set it down very slow, but we also don't know what the stall characteristics of this plane are since we didn't do testing. It's coming down little by little. Thankfully, that canard in the front is almost as big as the wing in the back. And he's got a nice high angle of attack, so it's got some pretty low... Oh, and he puts her down and almost rolls her. Jeb pulls off another successful mission. Not the mission he wanted to fly. Nonetheless, a successful mission. And now we're going to pick up on what Jeb would have been doing, well, had he not been sent on a mission to get that 9 science. Here we meet, and wait for it, Nichole Kerban, a brand new recruit, recruited in to take the place of Jeb while he's on hiatus, is what they're calling it. We're calling it paid suspension, or pretty much the equivalent to being shipped off to the poles. Nichole's on his way. Where is he going? Well, the next mission that Jebediah was set up for was to go back to Minmus. Without him there, and with Bill and Bob still recovering from their missions, we have Nichole stepping in to see if he could pull off the same successful missions that were pulled off by Jebediah, Bill, and Bob. So far, so good. He's got some nice thrust going off here. He's got nice angle. And again, this one's being done at night. We're trying to stay out of the... Well, we don't want to be seen by that other program on the other side of the planet. We've got a jump on them already. We don't know if they have satellites that could see us in the daytime. So Nichole gets his ship up and into space. Of course, we got that Duna ship sitting there still rotating around the planet, which you don't know about yet. We've launched a probe with very limited science. It's waiting for its window to launch off to Duna. And that's what the alarm clock is up in the upper left-hand corner. So we're watching a lot of this at 4x. And we deploy the solar panels. And this ship has something that other ships haven't had. Lights. Yes, the Kerbans have discovered lights, which will make landing on the planet's surface, or on the Minmus's surface, a lot easier. So we're going for a totally different biome here today. Nichole's mission is to discover new things and hopefully make a discovery as significant as Jebediah's. We set our target. We fix our inclination to match. And we just wait while Nichole, at the controls, tries to pull off a feat that so far only 3 other Kerbans have done. As Nichole spins his ship around, getting ready to fire that oh-so-significant planar change, he's wondering, I wonder if I could eat the ice when I get there. And he makes his change. Next up, Nichole's got to set the actual intercept for Minmus, which generally has been a little bit difficult since nobody in this program has read any of the wikis on how to do it. Alright, we've got a nice little intercept there. Our encounter is a little bit far away, so we play with it and play with it and play with it, until finally at some point we just give up and Nichole just goes off and hopes that he can make up for it when he gets there. So back at home, Jebediah is sitting in mission control, sitting next to Bill and Bob and monitoring different systems on the ship, and wondering to himself, wow, if I only waited, this could have been me. What he doesn't realize is there were supposed to be 2 launches, and he and Bill were supposed to be doing valuable science together on Minmus. But because of his failure to, well, let other people decide what he's supposed to be doing, the actual science is limited now, and we're only going to be able to have 1 mission to Minmus. Weeks later, we should be able to get another rocket together to try again. In the meantime, we're going to be sending that probe now rotating around Kerbin off to Duna to gain some science there and pave the way for maybe a Kerbin mission to the Red Planet and to the rocky moon above. Alright, so Nedbald has almost gotten his intercept, and what he's looking for is to get into a polar orbit here. And the reason is there's going to be a little bit of mapping the planet with some cameras that nobody knows are installed. There we go. He's got his orbit. It's a great distance from the planet. We're going to have to be doing some extra burning. But we have loads and loads and loads of fuel here. And we hit time warp to get to the actual maneuver point. And we're looking for more science, but we're not finding it out here. So halfway through the mission almost, well, landing will be halfway through, Nedbald gets his okay to go into orbit. His burn begins. And in just a few moments, Nedbald will be the second Kerbin to orbit the moon Minmus. Of course, we all remember the green cheese run. Here we go. The interest in the moon is that the ice and other mixtures inside the ice may be able to be used for fuel in the future. So they're going to go and get some samples of the ice and bring it back and see, well, is there any way to turn that ice into fuel so we could build a base up here? So we approach the periapsis where we're going to shrink it down as close as we can get. Gravity is far less, if you remember the last mission here. There's our flag right in the upper, right around the 2 o'clock point over there before. Nedbald is anxiously awaiting his opportunity to take over the controls and to stop letting mission control tell the ship what to do. And here it comes. Controls handing over to Nedbald as they enter into a polar orbit. Legs out. And now all he has to do is scout the terrain. Now they're not going to land on an ice field this time. They're going to land on a slope to see if Nedbald could pull some science out of the slopes and see what other elements might be there. Obviously, there's still going to be ice up here, just not as much as there is in the ice field. So he falls majestically to the surface like a feather falling in the atmosphere of Kerbin, using just tiny little thrusts to reduce the velocity just ever so slightly. We're still using the initial legs on this ship, which, although very capable of absorbing shock, are definitely not as capable as the legs that you get later on. Nedbald eases the ship closer and closer. We're getting some science off of our goo containers. And still easing the ship down little by little. And all this is at 4x, just so you know. So this was a lot slower in reality. Why did we just get science above the surface? I think it's because we haven't gotten it above the surface, and this was supposed to be a 2-part mission. But with us having to build another ship now and come back later, I figured we'd get the science above in this one and the science below in the next one. So Nedbald is still floating down to the surface. It's miserably slow. But he's got such a gorgeous view of the system's sun while he's doing it. All right, lights are on, so we will see the surface as it creeps up towards us. We're still probably about 1,500 meters above the surface. Easing down slowly, Nedbald looking all around. If you watch him in the lower right-hand corner, all of a sudden we see the surface come into view. And little by little, the lights are giving us what we need to see to land. Getting closer and closer still. And Nedbald is about to become the second Kerbin to land on Minmus's surface, this time on the slopes. And it's just a few painful seconds to go. And he's down. Well, sliding down a little bit. Of course, we were on a slope. And we're down. Welcome to Minmus, Nedbald. It's time to get out and do some science. So, with the opportunity for testing of the actual thermometers, I believe Nedbald brought them here with him. So even though Jebediah was not on this mission, things he did made this mission actually possible. Nedbald leaps from the capsule. Come on, Nedbald. Come on. He leaps from the capsule and tries to become the first Kerbin to not facepalm while stepping on a surface of one of Kerbin's moons. Let's see if he does it. And he did not do a faceplant. How about that? Nedbald gets out of the ship and he looks around and goes, "It's dark here. I think I'll stay in the light." Who knows what kind of strange creatures could be living in such a hostile environment. And look how happy he looks. Definitely looks like he was mentored more by Jebediah than by one of the other Kerbanauts. This is why Nedbald was selected, because of his utter happiness and giddiness that makes him so much like Jeb. And the question of him being Nedbald but having hair always comes up. So we get out of here and we're going to plant our flag. We always have to plant our flag. And here we are. We are here. And what did we write this time? And it's called Mount Cheese. Mount Cheese? What? All right. We need to make sure that we write those down from now on. So we write something funny on it. We could always look at this later. Maybe it's called Mount Green Cheese or something? Who knows? But Nedbald is writing what he needs to. He was supposed to write, "We came in peace for all Kerbin kind," hoping that the people from the other side of the world, if they read it, know that they're not looking for military endeavors here. They're looking purely for science. Oh, Nedbald jumped off the surface and almost launched himself into orbit. I think he has to realize that you can't be doing that. And Nedbald was trained by Jebediah in the jetpack, so he should be able to make it on the first try, and he does. And let's send some of that science back. Oh, we don't have much left to take. Is there anything we could send back? You're not going to trash that? You're going to send it back. That's a good one. And we cannot send anything else back. We are ready to go. Oh, where are you going, Ned? Oh, what Nedbald did was he realized that he couldn't get more reports because he already had one. So he went into the capsule, transmitted one of his reports, came back outside, took another one, and he's going back in. And a second time he lands on the surface, does not faceplant, and makes it back in on the first try. Jeb was a good trainer indeed. And here we go. Everything else is taken care of. And we can do our duty of collecting the last little science tidbits with our thermometers working fully. We'll take some readings on each side and then go. 4, 3, 2, 1. And they're off. And we're going to accelerate to 4x for our trip home. Nichole just had one of the most successful missions, equally as successful as Jebediah's mission the last time. Though no secrets were unveiled here, which still have not been revealed to those of us who watched their endeavors, it was still a very successful mission. What exactly did Jebediah uncover? They're not even telling him. They're giving him hero status. But in this one, we were able to test out our new thermometer on a lunar surface, or, Minmus surface, grab some valuable rocks, hoping that they'll have the same qualities that the ice had that was brought back the last time, and proving that we can actually get into a polar orbit and back without running out of fuel for once. And here we go. And Bald is making the necessary adjustments to his orbit. And now we'll attempt to fire his engines for the long trip home. 16 hours. And here we go. He should have an intercept with Kerbin with no problem there. Now these are the times I get scared, because these guys are not Jebediah, who doesn't have to do all these extra maneuvers all the time, like not getting into a close enough orbit or getting too far away from the home planet where you have to spin around it a couple of times. So let's see how Nichole does. All right. And Nichole is going on a long, very long trip around Kerban. He did not get a close enough encounter the first time, just like he did the last. He's going to need more training. So he starts to bring down his periapsis by burning on this side of the planet, and gets it right into an area where he gets into flying around the planet a few times. And finally, he pulls his orbit in close enough to actually break the atmosphere so he can return home after a few days in space. But maybe, just maybe, it was planned that he was going to be orbiting like that. Maybe there was other things that Ned was doing that we just couldn't see. So Ned comes back to the apogee, apoapsis, and will complete the maneuver to get him back into the atmosphere. And here we go, little by little, getting ready for that final entry back into Kerban's atmosphere. And Bald looks to see if there's any more science that he can get. He wants to be one of the most successful Kerbanauts. He's got a long way to go to be on the scale of Bill, Bob, and Jebediah. He streaks into the atmosphere and realizes the thermometers were on the lower stage. We are not going to be able to collect that valuable thermal data. A failure in the design has cost us valuable information. Needless to say, someone's going to have to pay for that move. Maybe they'll send Jebediah in the plane up there. Who knows? Well, probably not. That plane would never reach Minmus. So, here comes Ned Bald falling deeper into the atmosphere, getting closer and closer, and he's about ready to splash down, and we slow down from 4x to 1x, and he's down. We're going to recover our science. We've got about 420 science now, I believe. Let's see what comes up. 441, I believe. 414. And we go back. And we have 452 science to spend. We're going to get us some new engines. We're going to get us the new capsule. And we're going to get us some other things. Do we want that? That? Evidently, what we want is more science. And that is it. We are done. Thank you for watching episode 9. Jeb Gets Busted.